Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was the sole executor, the sole administrator, the sole sign, the sole residual legatee, the sole friend, and sole mourner. And even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come out of the story I'm going to relate. You see, Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley, firms known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as a flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire, secret and self-contained, as solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty bronze was on his head, his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about him. He iced his office in the dog days, and didn't fall 1 degree at Christmas. Nobody ever stopped in the streets to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. Nobody asked him what it was or o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind man's dogs paid to know him. And when they saw him coming, they would drag their owners into doorways and up courts. They would wag their tails as though they said, "No-eyed fool is better than an evil-eyed dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, wanting all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, for all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy with old. He could hear the people in the cold outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts, stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been light all day, and the candles were flaring in the windows of the neighboring offices, like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without that although the court was of the narrowest, the houses opposite were mere phantoms. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, so that he might keep his eye upon the clerk, and a dim little cell, sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small file. The clerk's file was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal, but he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and if the clerk came in with his shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore, the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed.